In this presentation, I'm going to talk about unconventional opportunities at $50 oil. I think it's a useful time to have this conversation as firstly the industry is realizing that $50 oil is most likely a new norm for the near to mid-term. And secondly, the North American unconventional sector has really been one of only a few bright lights of activity in the industry over the last 12 months, as it's enjoyed this resurgence and second coming of investor confidence and activity. My name is Ian Cockerell and I'm Head of Geoscience for the RISC Advisory Group. The talk will go down in scale from a global perspective through to a play perspective. And then we'll talk about this importance of understanding play heterogeneity and how we can better understand play heterogeneity in order to quantify our resources and develop them optimally in different price environments. When I talk about unconventional, I'm referring to all unconventional reservoir types, and the methodologies I'm going to come to describe can be used in quantifying all of the different types of unconventional resources. First of all, it's important to note that there are no hard lines between conventional and unconventional resources. In fact, when we look at the producing unconventional systems in North America, they are generally recognized and characterized using the same techniques we would use to characterize conventional reservoirs, zones of higher porosity, higher pressure, regional structure, etc. Although the plays are pervasive and laterally continuous, there is significant heterogeneity and differences in quality, which of course translates to differences in value. And in unconventional reservoirs, the way we think of recovery factor is different. In unconventional reservoirs, the recovery factor is dependent on how many wells you drill, so it's intimately linked to price and demand. So when demand rises and prices go up, we drill more unconventional reservoirs and we recover more hydrocarbons. And conversely, when demand decreases and prices go down, we drill less unconventional reservoirs and we recover less hydrocarbons. And so we end up with this interplay between unconventional production and oil price, which we've been seeing over the last few years. And I think the consensus is now that we'll continue to see that interplay between North American unconventional production and oil price in the next few years. But what we've also seen in North America is this impressive resurgence of activity across all of the unconventional plays. This second coming for unconventional exploration and production. The second trend of note is the North American shift to liquids. What we found was that due to intense drilling for shale gas, principally in the Marcellus up to 2008, we ended up with a saturated gas market. This led to gas prices falling to around $3, which we've seen stay at those prices for the last 8 years, and we're not expecting that to change in the near term. The reason we're not expecting gas prices to change too much is firstly the continued efficiency of producing Marcellus gas, and secondly the massive amounts of associated gas which are getting produced essentially for free out of the unconventional liquids production. This map, courtesy of the EIA, provides us with a useful starting point to discuss global unconventional opportunities. Of course, we can recognize there is a phenomenal amount of unconventional potential outside of North America. However, during this period of sustained lower oil prices, the development of unconventional plays outside of North America is undoubtedly challenging. I've color-coded the map now based on observations of when those particular basins became in the past commercially interesting. So at what oil price did we really start to hear people talking about these particular basins with regard to their unconventional potential? This of course is somewhat subjective, but it's quite clear, and not really surprising, that outside of a select number of systems in North America and a handful more in different parts of the world, the majority of these opportunities don't gain real commercial interest and traction at oil prices less than $80. What we've also recognized over the last few years, of course, is that certainly 4 or 5 of the North American systems are not only healthy, but even commercially robust under a $60 oil environment, and some of the sweeter spots of those plays being robust at $40 oil. What this map starts to give us on a macro scale is an impression of where the global unconventional sweet spots are, and of course the principal drivers behind those sweet spots are a supportive business environment, and access to market and infrastructure. So let's focus down a bit and look at North America. So oil plays on the left, gas plays on the right. These maps are a dime a dozen on the internet, but what we really need to start looking for here is how these particular plays relate to price environment. We need to understand which plays switch on and switch off at different prices, and which parts of the plays switch on and off at different prices. So I've sanitized this map a little bit, but what we're showing now is how the heterogeneity of these plays form sweet spots of better value. We can begin to see that some plays are going to break even at lower oil and gas prices, and obviously some areas of plays are better than others. We often see figures like this illustrating break-even ranges in the North American plays. So, for example, the Montney play in Canada has some of the best break-even prices of any play in North America. Parts of the Montney will break even at around $24 a barrel, whereas other parts of the Montney will break even at about $68 a barrel. All of the plays have a range due to their heterogeneity, and those sweet spots are developed through things like zones of thicker pay, higher porosity, depth, pressure, all characteristics we can begin to map and understand. And understanding those characteristics is key to making sure that you're in a sweet spot versus a fringe part of the play. Let's take it down another level now, and I'm going to look at the Eagleford play here. So this is what the Eagleford looks like at an oil price greater than $70. Everything is switched on. Now let's add this oil price slider bar, and I'm going to move the oil price down to see which areas retain commerciality at lower oil prices. So moving my oil price down, here we are at $50 oil now. So the Eagleford play is about 30% switched on. It's still 2.5 million acres, so a huge area. And this is now looking at all of the area of the Eagleford play which is working commercially at less than $50 oil. This is how we need to begin to understand these plays in terms of recognizing opportunities and optimizing development. So I've come back up to the $50 to $60 oil range, and I like to think of what's happening in these plays as an unconventional accordion. So these plays are contracting and expanding consequent to rises and falls in oil price. Let's stay with the Eagleford as it provides us with a great example of the phenomenal growth seen in these plays. Back in 2007, the play had 5 gas wells producing in the trend about 250 kilometers apart. Skip forward to 2017 and we have nearly 20,000 wells in the play. Now keep an eye on San Antonio here in the middle of the map frame just to the north of the play on the map to the right, and watch what happens. This is the city lights of San Antonio at night from space, Austin to the north, and this smile across the middle of the map is all of the Eagleford activity. No towns and cities there, those are all the rigs lighting up at night. Staying with the scale of these plays, the column to the left here is a typical Permian Basin section. You can see 8 or 9 reservoir objectives indicated there over a height of around 1,350 meters. If we compare that to the beautiful city of Perth here, that would be a height nearly 6 times greater than Brookfield Place. Now let's imagine lateral wells extending from Brookfield Place along the esplanade to the other side of Harrison Island. Massive scale. Now let's imagine more than one lateral from the pad, and this is where the efficiencies of scale in these plays really comes in. One of the key cost efficiencies seen in unconventional development has been the rise of pad-based drilling. 7G, operating in the Montney in Canada, are now planning pads to house 36 wells with 4 active rigs on one pad at any one time. Very small surface footprints for huge subsurface fetch. And pad-based drilling, amongst other things, has driven down the development costs across all of the plays. From looking at break-even prices in the order of $65 to $100 a barrel in 2013, we are now seeing break-even prices for development wells across some areas of the plays in the range of $30 to $40 a barrel. Let's stay with the Eagle Ford again to talk about the challenges of these plays outside of North America. Now, surely an unconventional new venture doesn't come easier than the Mexico Eagle Ford, right? 20,000 producing wells on trend and just stepping across the border. So why haven't we seen this work yet? Why does the Mexico Eagle Ford only have a handful of unconventional tests so far? Where would this opportunity rank against something like the Canning or the Beetaloo? Well, the challenges here in Mexico are just the same as those we face elsewhere in the world. We're in a higher cost environment due to the smaller service sector. We have a lack of infrastructure. We have a poorer regulatory framework than what we see in the US and Canada. And we have above ground risks such as security and contract sanctity. These are often the same challenges we face in other global unconventional opportunities. So at $50 oil, the key opportunities are in North America, and understanding play heterogeneity is key. We've seen that these plays have conventional characteristics, so how can we understand that play heterogeneity and make sure that we're investing and exploring and developing in the right plays and in the right areas of plays? I'm going to take an example from work we've been doing in the Montney. So in the Montney, we used an extensive digital database of 1,400 wells across the play. We identified individual characteristics key to production performance and began to map them individually across the play. So things like permeability, porosity, SW, liquids-gas ratio, pressure, etc. We then stacked those elements together to produce what we call a common recovery segment map. This map shows relative recovery potential away from known production calibration points. Through a spatial analysis workflow, it allows us to build up an understanding of estimated ultimate recovery across the entire play fairway, defining the heterogeneity and identifying areas of better potential, and ultimately quantifying value across the entire trend. So one of the key products we get out of this approach is a section by section quantification of estimated ultimate recovery across the entire play fairway. So each section here has attributes behind it linked to the geological characteristics of that cell, allowing us to describe the play and quantify the play in unprecedented detail. This work has been brought together to produce the Montney Play Atlas, one of a series of products RISC is undertaking in describing and quantifying the major North American unconventional plays. Moving further down in scale again, our spatial analysis workflows can now help us in development planning. Each planned horizontal location here is directly linked to the underlying attributes, including the estimated ultimate recovery interpretation on each section for liquids and for gas. So that provides a value for each location and allows us to start switching on and off locations dependent to oil and gas prices. So we can bring back our oil price slider bar. At $75 oil in this particular area of the Montney, we can recognize a total of 94 commercial locations in the upper Montney and 72 commercial locations in the lower Montney. If we move down to a $55 oil environment, our development wells automatically start switching off when they don't meet the commerciality threshold, and we end up with a total of 7 commercial locations in the upper Montney and 7 commercial locations in the lower Montney. Because of the underlying EUR framework, we're being able to plan development in different price scenarios. And as you can see where we started the presentation, the recovery potential of the asset becomes dependent on the price environment. So in summary, I think the consensus is that the North American unconventional production will continue to be the short to medium term kingmaker for oil price. Understanding heterogeneity in these unconventional plays is key. And if you can understand that heterogeneity, we believe that opportunities still exist in North American unconventional plays for low-cost entry positions. It all comes down to doing your homework, understanding the plays from a regional scale, understanding the play characteristics, and then using those play characteristics to help define your play in terms of its heterogeneity. Global unconventional opportunities will require a niche market, and again it will require that same technical and commercial rigor to fully understand the opportunity. Thank you. For more information on this presentation or how RISC might be able to support you, then please feel free to email me or check our website.